Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Leela Rhodes and I'll be your moderator today. Thank you so much for joining us here at NetCom Learning, a market leader in promoting lifelong learning, training, and talent development solutions. We are very excited to host today's webinar, Implementing Effective Risk Response Strategies on Your Projects. Presenting today's topic is Soumik Das. Soumik is a project management subject matter expert with over 15 years of progressive experience in project and service delivery management. His focus areas include task tracking, team management, client interaction, problem solving, deficit prevention, and process implementation. He possesses a vast knowledge of the latest project management tools. He has also assisted clients in managing and monitoring projects using the project management tool MS Project 2010 and and 2013 and much more. Now, please bear in mind that this is just an overview of a very robust topic, and we do offer a collection of technical and business courses that can be tailored towards your specific requirements. If you're interested in a further discussion about any of those, you can make an appointment with our learning consultants through our website at www.netcomlearning.com. Today's session is also being recorded, so you will get free access to the recording in the next 24 hours via email. NetCom Learning helps customers build innovative learning organization by achieving a smarter workforce, adopting change, and driving growth. We do this with a broad catalog of offerings, developing customized learning plans, and our global delivery capabilities. Since 1998, we have been empowering organizations with our managed learning services to help them reach optimal performance results and address challenges. We have 9 practice areas in which we specialize, and they encompass people, process, and technology training. Today's presentation is from the business process practice area. NetCom Learning offers a comprehensive training portfolio for business process courses, and our upcoming classes include various trainings on Introduction to Project Management, e-learning, PMI authorized PMP exam prep, and many more. And private training to teams is also available, and those learning plans can be customized to the specific needs of that audience. You can also access a variety of business process marketing assets, such as the free 1-hour training, free on-demand training, and blogs by clicking on the available webinar handout. And these offerings can also be found with a simple search on our website, www.netcomlearning.com. In this webinar, we will learn about the project risk response strategies and get a thorough understanding of the different types of risk, how to eliminate uncertainty, how to transfer ownership and or liability to a third party, and much more. And now I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the logistics before we do get started today. To start with, you have the option to adjust the window size to your liking. You can simply hit the escape key and find the Zoom button on the top left corner of your GoToWebinar viewer. Everyone has been muted except for our presenters, so feel free to submit any questions you have for the presenters in the questions panel, and we will address them at the end of the session today. Also, to get the best out of today's webinar, we've included the slides, courses we've talked about, and marketing assets in the handout section of your GoToWebinar viewer, and you can refer to those at any time to get a better understanding of the topic. And now, without any more delay, I'm going to go ahead and pass the time over to Soumik to present today's topic.
Thank you
Soumik,
very
you
much,
should be
Leela.
able to share.
Is the screen visible?
It is. Thank you so much for joining us.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Leela. And welcome everyone on today's session about implementing effective risk response strategies. Now, let me be very clear that this particular topic, when we talk about risk, this is something which is going to be one of the most critical aspect in projects. Now, how well as a project manager you manage risks in your project, that's going to define whether your project is going to be a successful project or it's going to be considered as a failed project. So this is a thing that you need to be very conscious about. This is something which is going to impact when we talk about the aspects that are generally being evaluated in a project, which is cost, schedule, scope. Risks can impact any of these aspects. Now, just to go ahead and have a brief introduction about what precisely is considered as risk. So if I have to go ahead and go through the definition provided by PMI. PMI, by the way, is the uh, organization who manages the de facto standard for project management, and it manages certifications like PMP, PGMP, PFMP, RMP, PMI, ACP, disciplined agile certification. So you may go ahead and consider this to be an organization who's managing every aspect of project and project management. So as per PMI, any kind of future uncertainty will be considered as a risk. Now, there are two keywords in this definition. One is future, another one is uncertainty. So keep this in mind when you try to go ahead and identify or understand risk. You need to keep this in your head that we are talking about a possible situation that might happen, and a possible situation that will or that is going to have an impact on project. Because if I talk about uncertainties, there can be multiple situations or multiple things which will have uncertainties. Like if I'm managing a software project, the weather conditions, there are uncertainties about weather condition. Would I go ahead and consider that to be a part of my project risk? That depends. Is there any impact of the weather conditions on my project progress or the project outcome? So as a project manager, it is going to be very crucial for you to understand what do you go ahead and categorize as a risk. So when we talk about risk per se, um, one thing is for sure that at this point in time, you are not 100% sure whether it is going to happen or not. And that's the reason when we try to evaluate the risk, generally, when we try to evaluate a risk, when we try to prioritize a risk, we go ahead and calculate the probability, which is the possibility of a risk happening, and the possible outcome or a potential outcome of that risk, which is generally being termed as the impact levels. The probability and the impact is calculated between 0 and 1. And keep this in mind, it is considered always in between 0 and 1. It will never be an absolute 0. It will never be an absolute 1. And the reason behind that, team, is if you say that there is this risk, which is considered as 1, which essentially means you're saying you're 100% sure it's going to happen. If you're 100% sure, then it will not fall under the category of risk. It's going to fall under the category of issue. And if you're saying it's 0, which means you're 100% sure it's not going to happen at all, then it is not supposed to be part of your risk document. One more thing that you need to be very clear, team, that when we say risk, we are not categorizing the risk or the uncertainty, saying that it will always have a negative impact. So I have seen many projects and many project managers, many organizations only focusing on negative risks. I mean, I'm not saying it's this is not something which you're supposed to do. Yes, as an organization, as a project manager, you need to be very much aware of those uncertainties which can impact the project negatively. But at the same time, you need to also go ahead and focus on those uncertainties, those possible conditions that can positively impact the risk. So risk, keep this in mind, in a broader term, can be categorized as a positive risk, can be categorized as a negative risk. What is a positive risk? Any risk or any possible condition or a situation that can positively impact the project, that can be considered as a positive risk. Any risk that can negatively impact the project can be considered as a negative risk. Let me give you an example here to clarify. You go ahead and you've been assigned a project, and the leadership is asking you to go ahead, or the sponsor is asking you to go ahead and prepare a detailed plan and present that plan. And this plan is supposed to include the activities or tasks that you're planning to go ahead and accomplish, their sequence, schedule, and the cost part. So you prepare a plan which includes the scope of the work, the schedule, and the costing part, and you submit it. Now, once you are defining these cost related aspects, you're doing a lot of estimation. You're not 100% sure. You're assuming that a task will cost this much of money based on the resources that will be assigned, based on the raw material that will be required. So you do a lot of assumptions. You made a lot of assumptions. You make notes of these assumptions, but end of the day, these are assumptions. So what we're going to refer this particular number that you're going to give to your leadership, that's going to be an estimate. That will be called as an estimate. That's not a true figure till the time you're not absolutely going ahead and spending it exactly that same amount. Now, possibilities are that amount has been approved. Once that amount has been approved by the leadership, that becomes your baseline. Now, with cost, there's a possibility that things can go great, things can go in a worse situation. Worse situation, when you started implementing the project, when you started executing the project, you realize that the costs have gone up. That leads to a situation that you won't be able to cover the whole project within the defined cost baseline or the budget that you have identified or that you have calculated. You have to go ahead and look for other means to get funding for the project. I'm not going to get into the details how you get the funding at this point in time. That's going to be a topic that we may go ahead and discuss another day. But that's going to be one condition if the cost goes up. But there is one more possible situation. And that possible situation is that the raw material costs may go down as well. What's going to happen if the raw material costs go down? How much saving you can go ahead and make? What kind of impact this saving can have? Will that give you an option to enhance the product or increase the scope? Possibilities. I'm not saying you will be doing it, but these are possibilities. And that's why you as a project manager or you as someone involved in project would always keep a track on these. In simple layman's term, keep this in mind. We project managers, we hate surprises. We don't want to see a situation wherein something happens and we are not aware of it. The kind of condition that we want, the kind of situation that we expect is we have prepared a plan and everything should go precisely as per the plan. Even if there are certain possibilities that things may not go as per the plan, we want to know what are the possibilities, what are the chances of those situations, and we want to prepare action plan to deal with those situations. Now that's a brief about risk and the definition of risk, but what could be the possible uh, situations? What are the possible areas that can introduce a risk to your project? What could be those things that can bring risk to your project? So first things first, technology. And the reason why I actually kept that at a very top is because in today's time, it's practically impossible for you to go ahead and say that, yes, this technology is going to sustain for a very long time. You never know. Tomorrow, there is a new technology available. Day after tomorrow, there's another option available. These technologies, which are continuously enhancing and being introduced in the market, gives an option that, yes, there are positive or possibilities of improvement. This also leads to a situation wherein, because of technologies that are being introduced on a very frequent basis, leads to a situation wherein old technologies are getting obsolete very frequently, can lead to a potential negative aspect being introduced to your project as well. Now, the projects that we normally go ahead and work on earlier, if you compare the projects that we used to go ahead and work on, say 15, 20, 30 years back, there was a precise product. The scope was very precisely defined. There was very specific kind of technology that we are supposed to go ahead and use to go ahead and accomplish that product. That was the definition of project then. Now, projects are getting complex, and the complexity is because of multiple technologies that are being supposed to be used, or that can be used to go ahead and accomplish that product or that objective of that project. That also leads to uncertainties to the project. Second major reason, and this is something which majority of the project managers uh, kind of ignore, is the communication. Risks or uncertainties because of inappropriate management of communication. Communication, keep this in mind, the definition of communication is when you are cascading the information and you're confirming that the information is received and accepted. So that definition where you're just sending an email to someone and assuming that the other party have read the email, you all probably have faced this situation wherein you have sent an email, sent some communication, and later on that other person, that other stakeholder came back to you saying, I don't remember you sending me anything. And then going back, checking that email, and then saying, oh, no, this is not what I was looking for. Why exactly that happened? This practically happened. Yes. Yes. Most of you will go ahead and say, because the stakeholder who's supposed to read that email never read that email. And I am going to go ahead and say yes to it, that yes, that's one of the major reasons. But what else? What's there that you could have done to avoid that situation? So to avoid that situation, what you could have done is you could have follow up. You could have checked whether that information is being cascaded, is being received correctly or not. Scope creep risks, changes, very frequently happening changes. Now, very frequently happening changes, I or any project manager is not going to have any problem with frequently happening changes. The problem is when these changes are uncontrolled. Uncontrolled, unauthorized changes leads to a situation called scope creep. You end up in a situation wherein you have no idea what you have created. Risk related to the cost. And this is something, it's not new. When we talk about technology related, when we talk about scope creep, they were there earlier, but not to that extent. These risks are because of the complexity, increase in complexity of the projects. They've been now actually gained their position in terms of the possible uncertainties raised related to them. But cost related risk was always been there. Cost related risk essentially means a situation wherein you run out of money, or because of the mismanagement of money, the funds that is already being drained out, how you go ahead and manage those situations. Health and safety risks, especially when if you're involved in any kind of construction projects, oil and gas agencies, this is going to be one of the major aspect in your project where you will be evaluating possible or potential risk related to these aspects. Skills related risk, uncertainties related to finding the right people with the right skills. Now, technology is changing on a regular basis. Finding the right entity who understands that technology to an extent that you actually expect them to. Because let me give you an example. You need a programmer, but how good this programmer is supposed to be, the kind of programming that you're expecting to be written, is it a very general, basic kind of programming, or is it actually require someone to go ahead and write down those codes? That's going to be something which can introduce uncertainties to your project. Performance risks, a situation wherein you are not able to meet the expected performance. When I say expected performance, this will be capturing information like scope. Are you able to meet the level of scope that is supposed to be delivered by your project? In terms of schedule, are you able to meet the schedule aspects? And the last one that I want to go ahead and highlight here is going to be the external hazards. External hazards risk, external aspects, things that are not in your control. Anything, that can be anything. To name some, storms, floods, earthquakes, or government approvals, government norms, all these can be considered as external hazards. Now, the next point, these are the possible type of risks that you're going to see in your project. How you go ahead and manage risk in your project. First step is, and keep this in mind, this is where your risk management, the whole concept of risk management starts from this point. That's going to be from identifying risks. Now, if you go through some project management concepts, you will realize that this whole concept of risk identification starts from the very beginning of the project. And when I say very beginning, it actually starts from the point where you're going ahead and working on the project charter. Because you need to know, or the stakeholders need to know, keep this in mind as well, team, that when I say risk, it's not only for the project manager's eyes. It's for everyone who's involved in the project. Let anyone and everyone know about the risks. And these anyone and everyone are also going to be the source of information for you, who can go ahead and help you identify risks, who can help you identify the impact of the risk, who can help you identify solutions to deal with the risk. So first steps first is going to be to identify the risk. Find out what are the uncertainties that are possibly going to happen to your project. Next step is, now, in a general scenario, you will not be able to go ahead and categorize, or you will not be able to go ahead and say that there is only one risk or two risk or three risk in your project. It's never going to happen. You probably will end up creating a list of document, and that document is called a risk register. So this document is going to be pretty hefty. Now, the problem is, you have, as a project manager, you have limited resources. You cannot simply go ahead and try to deal with all the uncertainties that are identified. You cannot do that. You have limited resources. So you need to find out of all these uncertainties that are being identified, which one's going to have a very high impact, which one's going to have not that high impact on your project. So which one is critical, which one is not that critical. Now, this information is going to come to you once you go ahead and analyze the risk. How do you analyze? You calculate the project risk probabilities and the uncertainties, and you try and find out the impact. So possibility of the risk, impact of the risk. Once you calculate, once you consider these two concepts, that's when you come up with something called severity, the severity level of a risk. Severity is always going to be probability multiplied by the impact level. And keep this in mind, probability and impact is always going to be between 0 to 1. So you prepare, you try and evaluate the probability, try and evaluate the impact, you find out the severity. Now, once you have prioritized the project risks, link the possibility of each risk with its impact. Find out that in a particular situation, if this risk happens, what's going to be the impact of that risk on your project? How that risk is going to impact the project outcome. Fourth step, you have prioritized them, you've identified the impact levels of them. Next thing, identify possible solutions. What are the possible ways that can be used to deal with these risks? How can you go ahead and manage these risks? Next step, keep a contingency plan always available to you. Be ready. The reason why project managers are supposed to have contingency plan available is because when we talk about these plans, keep this in mind, they are based on assumptions. They are based on assumptions. The calculations that you did, the plan that you prepared, they're all based on assumptions. They may not work. So you need to be always be on your toes. You need to have a plan B always ready. So ask questions like, what should be done to reduce a likelihood of a risk? What can you do to make sure that the possibilities of the risk can be reduced? What should be done to manage risk if it occurs? So in case that risk happens, what can be done to go ahead and take care of it? And what should be done to utilize effectively the opportunities brought about by the risk? So how can you go ahead and make sure that the opportunities or positive possibilities that are being introduced by the risk, how they can be managed or utilized? And the last thing, record and track the risk alongside their associated tasks. Risk management, keep this in mind, it's not a one-time activity. That's not at all a one-time activity. Throughout your project, your priority of the risk will keep on changing. There will be new risks identified, old risks moving out of the picture. So you need to keep the document up to date and do not just keep your risk management to documents only. I've noticed a lot of projects, risk management, you talk about risk management and the project manager come up with a lot of documents. Are the stakeholders aware of the risk management plan? Are the resources aware of the potential or possible risks? No. So these documents are of no good. Documentation is gonna be helpful, but is documentation the only thing that's gonna be required for risk management? No, not at all. Now the question is, how are you supposed to go ahead and respond to risks? What can you do to go ahead and respond to risks? Now, let's talk about negative risk. Why? Because negative risk is something which you're going to see a lot, or you will be dealing with negative risks a lot. The first and the foremost technique that I'm not going to say foremost, the first technique, this is not going to be foremost because it can lead to very extreme solutions. So one way of dealing with risk is a negative risk is to avoid the risk. The reason I say that it can lead to extreme conditions, see, in avoid, what you're trying to do is you are eliminating the threat. And at times, this can lead to a situation wherein to eliminate the threat, you go ahead and say that I don't want to take that risk at all. Can lead to a situation where you have to go ahead and drop the project. So it can go to that extent. Keep this in mind. In avoiding the risk, what you're trying to do is you're trying to make the risk impact. You're making the impact level to go to zero. This is what you're targeting. That's what you're trying to achieve. That possible action that's gonna make the possibility of that risk impact to go to zero. Next possible option, transfer. This is the most commonly used option. Shift the impact of a threat to a third party. Are you impacting or are you changing the probability or the possibility of risk happening? No. What you're doing is you simply shifting the impact, like insurance. Simple example, car insurance. Does that reduce the possibilities of accident? No. Possibility is still there. What's going to happen is, in case of damages, the damages will be taken care by the insurance company. But the possibility of an accident is still going to be there. Third, mitigate. Now, in avoid, you were trying to make the impact level go zero. In mitigate, you're trying to reduce the impact level to an extent which is acceptable to you. You go ahead and say that, okay, if the risk is at this level, if the impact is, let's say, this level, if because of this uncertainty, the cost increase is less than 2%, I'm fine with it. So you're taking an action, you're taking some steps to make sure that the impact of the risk goes to a level where the cost impact is less than 2%. And the last one is accept. Acknowledge the risk, but do not take any action unless the risk occurs. Why? You realize that the risk in itself is not that big. Probably preparing a plan and taking an action right away may actually go ahead and cost you much more time and much more money than the risk, the actual risk itself. So you simply go ahead and accept it. Positive risks, how you go ahead and deal with positive risks. Exploit. Enjoy the risk. Eliminate the uncertainty. When I say eliminate the uncertainty, take some actions to make sure that the risk happens. Now, in exploit, earlier when we are talking about negative risks, we are trying to go ahead and change the um, uncertainty level to zero. We were trying to reduce it to zero or near zero. In positive risks, we try to go ahead and take it to one, which is we're trying to make sure that it is going to happen 100%. Enhance, you increasing the impact level. Exploit, you are changing the probability. Here, the probability is getting changed. Enhance, the impact level is getting changed. Share, again, you don't have much of an idea how to go ahead and manage the risk. You go ahead and assign it to someone who have better information, better idea than you. So you realize that, okay, there are certain areas within the project that you are not very well versed with, or is not one of the primary capabilities of your organization. You go ahead and hire resources or hire teams who have expertise who can manage those risks for you. And finally, accept. Just like the negative risk acceptance, what you're doing here is you're going ahead and clearly saying that, yes, let's agree to the risk, but taking an action at this point in time may not be a very fruitful thing, because the action in itself is going to be much more costlier than the risk itself or the benefit it's going to give. So you simply go ahead and say that let's sit, let's see what happens. And if in future the risk is growing and we realize that, yes, the risk may give better returns, that's when we're going to go ahead and take actions. That's it from my end, team. That's where I'm going to stop. I'm going to hand it over
Thank
to
you
Leela.
so much. As always, it's just a pleasure to hear you talk, and because we know you're such an expert on the subject, so I hope everybody's really was paying attention and taking advantage of that. We are going to take a minute and hear from Nishad. He is our director of inside sales, to introduce some products and promotions and webinar related courses. And while we hear from him, I actually want you guys to go ahead and take a minute and kind of go over in your mind what you heard today, and any questions that you may have, go ahead and put those into the questions panel. And as soon as we're done hearing from Nishad, we're going to go ahead and take those questions and a little question and answer session. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Leela, thank you. I know it's the most difficult part to stay or stick around right after you're done with such an informative session. I would like to first thank all of you for your presence today. And I want to remind us that why we exist in the business in the first place. The purpose of NetCom is to promote the values of lifelong learning. As you can see right in front of me in your screen, the bold, it says, be a lifelong learner. As an organization, not just as an employee, I'm going to tell you that we are promoting the values in so many ways Not, again, we are a for-profit business. So obviously, we have to make money at some point, but our purpose is to drive the learning so it can impact your life. There are quickly two things I want to talk about today, and all of these are posted under our promotions. I would like to highlight the free project management 2-hour session that we are offering and the benefits that it could bring. If you are representing an organization and your team has at least 10 or more people, you can discuss with us right here, the request form, get in touch with your learning consultant. We will walk you through and generate a session exactly mapping any specific project management area just to vet out our competency, or even just to explore, to learn more about a specific topic within the PMI domain that you would be interested in. As you know, if you are already certified, you have to maintain certain amount of PDUs to maintain this on an ongoing basis. And attending that 2-hour session, I will highlight it here, will allow you to PDUs, which you will have to document to PMI to maintain your credential. So take advantage of it. If you are representing an organization, get in touch with us. And I want to talk about, lastly, a newly launched NetCom Plus subscription. Again, it's a subscription that could add tremendous amount of values to your learning and development this year. The program purpose is primarily targeting the enterprises, small to mid-sized to larger enterprises. And you also can benefit from the individual. If you are not representing a company, you can also sign up. So what it basically means, it's an unique program that allows you to attend as many as instructor-led classes offered by NetCom within the whole year, as many classes that you are available to attend. And you can certainly download the brochure link and whatnot. We're going to be sending you via email, but take a look. Before I talk about price, I want to talk about the area of classes. You think of not just PMI, which we just talked about, all the PMP, PMI, RMP, PBA, all the specific classes that you may be interested in, you can take those classes. Beyond that, if you are exploring technical classes, especially Microsoft, Amazon Web Services, Cisco, Adobe, there are tons and tons of classes. It's about 500 courses for the price of one. How does that pricing work? Pricing is at $29.99 per person, but if you are representing an organization that has more than 10 people, more than 10 attendees or learners, or more than 10 subscriptions, the price drops to $24.99. Now, this is a unique program because it includes your labs, your instructor-led training, and unlimited access to our e-learning content for 12 months. If you are interested in learning more, on the right-hand side, you also have the form which you could fill out where we can get in touch with you to provide more information. So those are the three applicable areas that I feel that you could take advantage of. And on an ongoing basis, even if you're not sure, on the main page, you click on promotions. They're all across the board, all sorts of vendors that we focus on, from Cisco to Microsoft to AWS. You will be able to find our subscription details and everything that comes with it. With that, I would stop, and I want to thank you once again for your presence today. And we hope that in coming days, our learning and development promotional activities will be able to add more values to your days. And if you need any assistance at any point, please just ping us. We're just an email or a phone call away. Have a wonderful day. Back to you, Leela.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to present that for us. We are going to go ahead and jump right into our question and answer session. And for those of you who are attending, basically once we do wrap up with questions and answers, we will wrap up our session for today. So if you do have anything, go ahead and get that into the questions panel so we can make sure we address those. Our first question that I'm seeing today is, what is the difference between risk and issue?
Interesting question. So risks are future uncertainties. One of those uncertainties turned into being a certain situation, which means you considered that to be a possible situation. Now you're facing it. That's an issue. So you predicted that the weather may be cloudy, or it might be a rainy uh, day, but now it's raining. So when you predicted, that was a risk. It's raining, the current situation that you're facing, that's an issue.
Wonderful. So then there's a follow-up question. When should you start focusing on risks in the project lifestyle, or sorry, life cycle?
Cycle. So this is something that you're supposed to go out and start at the very beginning of the project. And it works throughout the project. While it actually starts in the initiation, in terms of the life cycle, it starts at the initiation when you're going ahead and trying to identify stakeholders and working on preparing your project management charter. So starts at that point. It goes through the planning phase. It goes through the monitoring and controlling phase till the time you're not going ahead and finally closing the project.
Wonderful. Well, with that being said, it looks like we are out of questions from the audience today. So we are going to go ahead and thank you, and we're going to launch a quick poll to find out how many people might be interested in taking some additional training. In addition to today's presentation or webinar, we also have some additional and informative webinars coming up. So please go to www.netcomlearning.com/webinars/ to register for any of those. We want to thank you all for joining us today. If you do come up with any additional questions, please feel free to send them to us at webinar@netcomlearning.com at any time. And we hope that you found today's webinar to be very informative. And we look forward to seeing you back here with us very soon. Also, feel free to tell your friends and colleagues about our webinars and other courses. Once again, thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.